Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the podcast. If you love and support the work that we do, head to www.sexedwithdb.com and buy some of our hot new merch. Follow us on Instagram at sexedwithdbpodcast. And if you want to advertise with us, shoot us an email at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. This week is all about banning conversion therapy with Sam Brinton. Sam is one of the world's leading advocates for LGBTQ youth. They are the founder of the 50 Bill 50 States campaign at the Trevor Project to end the dangerous and discredited practice of conversion therapy, first in the US and then around the globe. As a survivor of conversion therapy, Sam has spearheaded efforts to submit legislation and promote public education in the hopes of ending the practice on minors. Let's give a warm welcome to Sam. What better way to say I love you than, I want an exact replica of your penis or vulva? Say hi to Clone-A-Willy. Clone-A-Willy and Clone-A-Pussy are DIY molding kits that allow anyone to make an exact replica of a penis or vulva at home into a high-quality sex toy or memento. Check them out at www.cloneawilly.com and use promo code SEXED20 for 20% off your purchase. Follow them on Instagram at Clone-A-Willy-Kit. Bring some queer, fat, feminist art into your home or into your business. Andrea Forgach is an artist that creates pieces that are queer, inclusive, body positive, and self-loving. With her art, you'll be sure to make a statement wherever you need it. Go visit AndreaForgach.com, that's Andrea, Forgacs.com to commission your own piece, or download one of her illustrations in the shop. Follow her on Instagram at Andrea Forgach. Sex Ed with DB is supported by FemFun. FemFun empowers all to take control of their pleasure and sexuality by putting the most powerful products on the market into your hands. Electrify your intimate life with 15% off your first purchase. Go to www.femfun.com and enter promo code SEXEDWithDB at checkout. That's www.FEMMEFUNN.com. Follow them on IG at FemFun. Ever wish your period products were more eco-friendly? Tired of buying a $10 box of tampons every single month? Meet the OGs of sustainable menstruation, Isle. In business since 1993, their collection of smart reusables is easy on the planet and good for your body. Check out their amazing undies, reusable pads, and cups at www.periodisle.com and use promo code SEXEDDB to get 20% off your first purchase. Follow them on IG at periodisle. Hello, Sam. How's it going?
Not too shabby, my friend. The rain is dropping, but the sun is still shining, so I'll call it a win-win.
What a metaphor. You know, I'm currently in California. We need our rain here. It's really nice to have some of that rain, but you do need that sunshine on the shittiest of days as we've been experiencing the past couple weeks.
Goodness gracious, is that correct? That's it's the bright spots, right? The bright spots remind us that nature is still there. Mm-hmm. We're still going to, see the sunrise the next day, and that's how we get through some of these tough days. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for being here today to talk about you and the Trevor Project. We have so much good stuff, good questions that we'd love to ask you today. And we're just going to get started by you sharing your name, your pronouns, and a little bit about how you identify, whatever that means to you.
Absolutely. So my name is Sam Brinton. My pronouns are they and them, and I identify as a genderfluid bisexual nerd. That's how I guess those are the three words that I'll use to describe myself. My background is I'm a nuclear engineer. I used to disarm nuclear bombs and work on nuclear waste management. And now I work in LGBT politics at the Trevor Project. So a gender fluid bisexual nerd. Those are three good words for me.
Amazing. And what a shift from nuclear engineering to LGBTQ youth advocacy work.
Let's be very clear, LGBTQ politics 10 times as complex as quantum physics. Like 10 times as complex. A neutron goes where I tell it to go. A politician does not vote as I tell them to vote.
Oh
So
my
I have
gosh.
learned long ago that LGBTQ politics is going to be the greatest challenge of my academic life.
Oh, so fascinating. Cannot wait to learn more about that. Okay, so let's go into what is the Trevor Project? How long has it been around? What do they do? And what is your particular role there?
Absolutely. So, the Trevor Project is the world's largest suicide prevention and crisis intervention program for LGBTQ youth. Founded more than 20 years ago, it was actually quite interesting, the story. We had a short film that was coming out called Trevor about a boy that is misunderstood and is feeling lost and alone. Ellen DeGeneres had just come out a little bit before, and so she actually promoted and introduced the movie, which was playing on HBO, really big moment for our history.
Wow.
And the founders realized, oh, there may not be someone for people like Trevor to call if they're feeling lost or alone. And so they put up a few phones, and the phones haven't stopped ringing since.
Wow.
It's been an amazing opportunity. We now serve, more than 150,000 contacts every year. It is truly powerful. So we do this through a lot of different systems, right? We do it through the nice old phone. You can always call us. But we also, because I'm a good, millennial and even further in this work for others, maybe sometimes you don't want to talk on the phone. So we have text and chat 24/7. You can text or chat us. And we are there to listen and to help as we can. My specific role is not necessarily on the Lifeline itself, but as our head of advocacy and government affairs. So my job is to represent LGBTQ youth, whether that be in Congress, a courtroom, or state capitals across the country. It is all about making sure that the voices of LGBTQ youth are heard and that their lives are benefited, not hurt in any way by a lot of really terrible policies out there that keep being brought up, but that we are one by one taking down.
Incredible. And yeah, as we know, it's no secret that there are still in 2020 a ton of harmful policies that are
Yeah,
directed towards LGBTQ youth. So we'll definitely get into that. But thank you for that explanation. Um,
sure.
let's talk a little bit about conversion therapy. So for our listeners who
Yep.
may not be familiar, what is that? Why is it harmful? And if you want to share just a little bit about your personal experience, we would love to hear that as well.
It's a really important question because it's something that's not asked about enough. So conversion therapy takes so many forms. I'm a survivor of conversion therapy, so in a little bit I'll explain what my experiences were. But basically, in its most simple form, conversion therapy is the idea and the practice of trying to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity from LGBTQ to straight and cisgender. There has been hundreds of thousands of people who have gone through conversion therapy. In fact, according to UCLA and the Williams Institute, more than 700,000 people have gone through conversion therapy, with 350,000 of them being LGBTQ youth. Um,
Oh,
it is it is really a problem. For the Trevor Project, we did a survey, the largest national survey of LGBTQ youth out there. 2 out of 3 youth said someone had tried to change their sexual orientation or gender identity. So this is pervasive problem. Now, formalized conversion therapy, when we asked LGBTQ youth about that as well, more than 5% then said that they were experiencing conversion therapy. So this is not something that stopped in the 1980s. This is something that is happening today and really causing a lot of harm, a lot of harm. You asked, like, why is it harmful? And
mm-hmm.
and it's therapy, right? So we expect therapy to be helpful. I'm a huge proponent of mental health care, and I think that especially in today's climate,
In
like
the Rona
getting good
times.
mental health care. I mean, even more so today with coronavirus, right? But like in today's climate, this is a time where talking to someone about your mental health is important. But if that person has a goal of changing your mental health to instead have you identify in a different way than you are, and or even are questioning, then that's going to potentially be harmful. Your body is going to be kind of fighting itself, right? That's the problem with conversion therapy, is that it's a battle where both ways you're going to lose. So how do we know it's harmful? Well, according to our survey, again, it was really bad when it came to conversion therapy, in that more than half of LGBTQ youth who have gone through conversion therapy have reported a suicide attempt in the last year. That jumps to 57% of transgender and non-binary youth who have undergone conversion therapy reporting a suicide attempt in the last year. So this isn't having no effect. Like here's the best
correlation, basically.
It's a direct correlation. Those who go through conversion therapy are 2 to 3 times as likely to attempt suicide as those who have not. And LGBTQ youth, as you probably already know, are 4 to 5 times as likely to attempt suicide as their straight peers. So you are compounding this into like an 8 or 9 times as likely factor of attempting suicide as those who aren't going through this conversion therapy and are living healthy and productive lives, right? So it's a big, big problem. I can tell you a little bit about my experience, recognizing that, again, it is one of 700,000. So there are many variations, but my experience kind of led into what is called aversion therapy, which is when they try to attach negative stimuluses. So first, I was told that I was alone. So when I came out to my family, it became kind of an abusive situation, and my parents stepped in and said, we're going to try this thing called conversion therapy. We're not doctors, but maybe this person can help. Okay. And so when walking into a conversion therapist, I thought that this person was there to help me rather than hurt me. I was first told I was the only gay child left alive, that all gay children had to be changed or they would die. I was told that I had AIDS and had brought AIDS into that gays had brought AIDS into America, and that was why we couldn't be gay. I was told that my God hated me, which was truly heartbreaking as a person of faith, because that was my like rock and standard that I understood. All of these pieces of like mental torture were trying to make me not trust my family, not trust any other system other than this therapist, and recognize that I was wrong and needed to change. When that wasn't enough, we moved into physical aversion therapy, where my hands would be either placed in heat or ice or electricity, while pictures of men touching men were shown to me. So I would associate negatively what I was seeing with what I was feeling. Probably many people who are listening to this podcast have heard of Pavlov's dogs. Pavlov's dogs was the psychological experiment where they would ring a bell while they fed dogs. And at one point, all you had to do was ring the bell and the dog would think it was going to get fed, so it would start to salivate. The same thing happens in reverse for aversion therapy. Sometimes you may have heard smokers or ex-smokers will wear rubber bands around their wrist, and they'll snap the rubber band to make a little bit of like, I don't want to do that, right? This is that to a 10 million degree, kind of concept. And it was devastating. When I would later come back out and have my very first kiss, I would puke within about 10 seconds of it, because it was so painful that I hadn't do it. Now, to be very clear, I've moved past it. I don't let my conversion therapy define me, but I got married just a year ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Now you can hear I'm smiling through the phone. That was exactly what I did. Right. So walking down the aisle to Kevin, though, truly made me worried. I didn't know if I was going to hurt kissing him on my wedding day, right? It really, it is emotionally devastating for everyone. It is physically devastating for so many. As I already told you, when nearly 2 out of 3 are attempting suicide this last year alone, we are truly erasing and breaking a generation. And this isn't this is only the latest generation to go through this.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so, so sorry that that happened to you. And I'm so sorry that that's happening and has happened to so many people who are just people living in the world very normally and like having just being themselves. Like these people are just being themselves. And that's so awful that also that these conversion therapists who are not real, like scientists and are not real, or some of them maybe are real quote unquote doctors, but clearly like parents and families in like so many places are getting tricked into like your kid is going to be better this way, or there's so much like horror in these stories.
There are, and I think you hit on a really important part, which is this is happening by professionals. Let's not mistake this as only you know well, they
Quacks.
all charlatans. They all are hacks,
Right.
but sadly, some of these hacks have licenses. So the best way to put it is that, and from our what we've found, right, is that the Williams Institute found that again nearly at least 20,000 youth were at risk of receiving conversion therapy from a licensed mental health professional in the next couple of years. And then a religious advisor or a spiritual advisor, another nearly 60,000. So if you think about it, it's about one, 60,000, exactly. So it's about 1/4 are from licensed mental health professionals.
Wow.
We don't know the specific numbers because although many of these people advertise their services, they're very undercover in many cases, right?
Yeah.
But let's just imagine that. Like, could you imagine that 1/4 of your doctors out there would try to erase you for who you are? Like
Yeah.
that is just a terrifying concept.
And I also wonder, like, what, in terms of what is behind a majority of the, like, reasoning for these mental health professionals, like, is it religion? Like, is that, like, the sole driver? Or, like, I mean, like, what else could it be? You know? Is it, like, I'm a Jewish
Yeah.
person, so I have never, and I've very frequently, like, not necessarily in New York City because there are a ton of Jews there, but there have been spaces that I've been in where I have been the only Jew, and it is kind of strange because I don't know anything about like like Catholicism and Christianity in term, and
Sure.
but I do know that like in terms of erasing LGBTQ people and like this whole idea that that's quote unquote unnatural, I do know that that is characteristically like a religious Christian thing.
I will say that is true and an and statement, right?
Yes.
And New York City Orthodox Jewish populations are
Oh,
actually
for
why New
sure.
York City until recently had the highest per capita. So
Oh
it was
God. So
actually,
Orthodox Jewish people are definitely
yep,
participating in conversion
yep,
therapy.
exactly. And a variety of other faith practices, right? This is a cultural moment where I have to try to remind people like my mother was trying to save my life. My mother
Right.
did not think that I would have a happy, productive life if I was going to remain LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that is she was truly trying. Right? And this is why conversion therapy is such a problem, is that these are people, these therapists, and you can't see it, right in quotation marks, they are therapists, are preying on the fears of parents
Right.
and providing snake oil, right? Like make Tommy well with
Mm-hmm.
elixir of green, right? Like this is the same thing, just in a new generation of make Tommy well by making Tommy straight,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's the problem we're living in right now.
Yeah, I'm so appreciative of you saying that because I feel like Orthodox Jews are definitely problematic in a lot of ways. And like in actually the reason why I like started this podcast was because I was living in Israel for a year and I had like a crazy experience with a super religious rabbi in a Jerusalem temple where basically he was like, yeah, I have like 7 daughters and like when they all turn 18, like we're just going to marry them off by the matchmaker and they won't learn about sex until their wedding night, and we just like kind of pray to God that they get pregnant. And that was like the impetus for me being like, oh no, this is so problematic in so many ways. So of course Orthodox Jews and Mormons and every other religion like are participating in this because hate is so pervasive, and this whole idea of normalcy and like passing on children, like is it the whole thing of like you have to be able to pass on children? Like I really wonder what the like beginning root of it is. You know what I mean? Like do you think what do you think it is? Do you think it's like this? I mean, I'm sure it's obviously a mixture of things and you can't really point to one thing, but when I think deeply about it, it's like, is it that? Is it the fact that you're so scared that your kid won't be able to pass on kids? Like is that part of it?
That's I've not been asked that question before. I would frame it, so I am a person of faith, right? So I still practice my faith every day if I can,
Right.
but like at least every week, right? And it is I recognize that some people of faith hurt us because of their interpretation, right? Like that interpretation has to be grounded in something. So I believe that interpretation is grounded in love, because I pray that all of these faiths aren't just hating everyone, right? Like, so if we assume that this is out of love, then I assume the core is they do not expect, because they did not see it in normal day practice, right? They do not see happy, healthy, productive families, exactly, of LGBTQ people, and they think that the family is
central.
God's central point on earth, right? And so those who cannot create families cannot be of God's will. Now, to be very clear, that is a bad review, because there's a lot of people who form families in a lot of different ways, right? As we obviously both know. But as a person of faith, when I try to think of, okay, why is this person acting this way? I tend to think of it, okay, they must want the best for me in some way that I just can't see yet, right? Maybe this is like very Pollyanna of me, but like that's where I go. And I try to think, well, what would be a way that I can help demonstrate to them that I can still have those experiences and those benefits that they are looking for, as I am, right? So it was really important to me to get married to my partner. But that doesn't mean it is for everyone, right? Like I recognize that marriage isn't for everyone. For me, it was a really interesting moment of overcoming conversion therapy, though, as well, along with it being, my love for Kevin, without any question. There was also the point of reminding folks that this wasn't a choice that I just like flipped off not loving someone or an entire group of people, right? This was, I was showing the world, actually, I am who I am, and I will love who I will love, and that love is just as beautiful, right? It just takes a lot of different forms for a lot of different people, and I think that's why we're doing so much work. The Trevor Project is working hand in hand with groups of faith, with mental health professionals, and with legislators to make conversion therapy a thing of the past. Because parents shouldn't have the option. We shouldn't have the option to put your kid through something that is so harmful, just as a precaution to take care of kids. That's where we start. Like, despite the whole erasure of my people thing, there is just we shouldn't be hurting kids thing. And that's where our work at conversion in ending conversion therapy kind of centers for Trevor Project.
Yes. Yeah. So to kind of build on that, can you talk a bit about like what that work looks like with the Trevor Project, like in terms of who are you like, getting on the phone with? Who are you having meetings with? What are the steps that you all are taking to actually ban conversion therapy across the United States? And is it very much kind of a fragmented thing because the US is so fragmented in terms of state policy, or are you kind of attacking both angles of like state and federal legislation?
So, most states, no. So every state manages the licenses for their mental health professionals in a state level, not on a federal level. So we have to go state by state.
Okay.
Now, the good thing is that we can convince, it's sometimes much easier to get some states than it is to get other states, right? So we've actually been able to do it, and in a very bipartisan way. To be very clear about that, right? Like, so we have already, in the last couple of years, passed 20 bills. We have 20 states where we have ended conversion therapy in a matter of years. It is one of the fastest moving LGBT movements in history. Whereas marriage equality took a decade between some of the different bills,
right?
We are passing them in a couple of months. In one of my statistics that I love to throw out is that until coronavirus, we were literally passing a bill every other month. Wow. Literally every other month we were passing another bill.
How do you do it?
A lot of really, really important recognition that everyone has a role to play in the fight to end conversion therapy. So we've done this with both sides of the aisle. More than seven Republican governors have signed on to bills ending conversion therapy. We've had more than 400 to 500 Republicans vote against conversion therapy. We are making sure that everyone has a role to play. If you're a mental health professional, we've had you testifying about its true and utter harms. When you're a parent, we've had them saying, I could have been swindled out of tens of thousands of dollars for something that wasn't actually going to change my child. And that is wrong. We've had survivors like myself share our stories, whether it be the New York Times op-ed, right, or a little small classroom in Kansas, right? Like, doesn't matter where it's been shared. It matters that the stories are being told. We've also made, again, a significant amount of progress on just the national conversation. So when I started this work back a while, there have been many who've worked much longer than I have in the work to end conversion therapy. But as I've gotten started, there was still so many people advertising conversion therapy, right? It was everywhere. You would type in conversion therapy, and it was like you could choose your provider within the first 10 results. Now we have it where major movies like Boy Erased and The Miseducation of Cameron Post are taking me. I got to walk the red carpets of the Oscars a couple of years ago, right?
Lucky.
And it was an amazing experience. And it was this moment this was because conversion therapy was center stage. We were saying that this was the time, right? This was where we were going to start making sure that stories and storytelling are the major forms of advocacy that will win this fight. It was not until we started sharing the stories of love that marriage equality really started to move fast, right? If we think about it, it wasn't about the benefits. It was about the love. And that storytelling is what took over for marriage equality. The same happened for us. We just did it right from the start. Right. We just started from the beginning and said, you know what? That's it. Nope. We are going to raise the voices of survivors and what I call the survivor adjacent community, the community of support, right? It shouldn't all fall onto us.
Right.
It should fall into a lot more of the work of, the parents and the pastors and the professionals. But we need all of us to be sharing our stories and making it happen. And it's working. Like I said, these bills all center on youth. So they say that a minor cannot have conversion therapy practiced on them with conversion therapy well defined, and that if a person with a license does that, they could lose their license, right? Like it's the risk of financial ruin if they do that conversion therapy. And we're really proud to say that it's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court and be defended twice now. And both times the Supreme Court has rejected the case and upheld the standards. So we are hoping that continues. We obviously do not that is just where we are. We are winning so far, and we will continue winning. And I'm going to mention one more thing. I know that
Please.
we're probably a little bit over, but
No.
I like a really important part is also that we're fighting in the hard states too. So when I started 50 Bills, 50 States, which is the campaign that we do, there were only about 9 to 10 states working on ending conversion therapy. Maybe. We just hit state number 40.
Wow.
So we have quadrupled the number of states working to end conversion therapy. Now, that doesn't mean that they've all passed the legislation,
Right.
but submitting legislation in another 20 states brings us to the 40 that I can kind of say, like, wow, like
you're
the
almost
kid in
there. Like you're working towards your goal.
It's truly, when you talk about LGBT equality, conversion therapy is the bright spot. It really is, right? Like I think the statistic I saw last year was that there were like 7 or 8 pro-LGBT bills passed in state legislatures. 5 of them were conversion therapy bills, right? Like we are doing so much, big stuff. And it's really exciting to get to have podcasts like this, like share the story, because I think it's even more people realizing, who are probably right now hearing this and being like, oh, didn't realize that was still a thing.
Right.
Also, really excited that it's not as much of a thing as it was, a couple of years ago, but still, wow, we have a lot of work left to be done.
Exactly. Hopefully people who are listening kind of get engaged and, follow the Trevor Project and you on social and really can do their own part to call representatives and do letter writing campaigns. And, there's a lot of power in knowledge. And I think when people know the truth and know the facts, they can, and know that they can do something about it. It's super empowering. So let's keep it moving. As we said, Trevor Project is doing all of this amazing work. We've talked about all the amazing progress that you've made. Can we maybe just talk specifically about the political climate today and what besides conversion therapy and kind of the other challenges that LGBTQ youth are facing, and maybe we've actually, since coronavirus and since it seems like this is something that's going to be impacting people for quite some time, definitely for the short term, people are isolated for, weeks, maybe months. The economy is definitely going down. People are getting fired. There are some groups who are more at risk of getting the virus than others. There are some groups who are at risk of not being able to work. For example, there are a lot of communities of sex workers who are kind of getting their stories out there about not being able to work in times like this, and some belonging to the LGBTQ community. I would love for you to tell us about how LGBTQ youth are impacted by the political climate, today in 2020, pre-corona and maybe during corona.
Okay, so the political climate is difficult. I'm generally the person of hope, but it is difficult. Now, to be very clear, we know it's difficult because even during our survey, LGBTQ youth told us this, right? So this isn't coming from just Sam. This is coming from LGBTQ youth. So of our national survey on LGBTQ youth mental health from the Trevor Project, 76% of LGBTQ youth felt that the recent political climate impacted their mental health or sense of self. So again, this is without question, it's having an impact. It is difficult because our numbers are higher than they've ever been before, and we recognize that LGBTQ youth are in crisis in a variety of different ways for a variety of different reasons. This is compounded by the fact that LGBTQ youth are coming out earlier and earlier, right? So this is in their lives. It's exciting, and we're really happy that people get to express themselves as they are, and identify with their true selves. And yet it's causing challenges to some LGBTQ youth who may see something like Glee or a movie where someone comes out and it's easy, and it's not as easy when it comes to reality, right? And that can be really difficult. We are each and every day trying to address a variety of different issues. For example, and one that I really am glad we get to talk about for a little bit, is suicide prevention policies in schools. We have found that nearly 1 in 3 students across the country go to a school without the word suicide even mentioned in a single policy in their school. That is terrifying. We are politically in a space where everyone wants to work on that, and we're getting some great legislation, but think of that as a political climate, right? The political climate is that we don't even need to talk about some of these issues, right? It's the erasure, but because of making us feel uncomfortable. So when it comes to political climate, I think we all have, again, something that we can do. We all have a role to play. There is definitely, how do I put this? There is definitely a really big divide that's happening in our nation. That is the common trope, right? Like
Right.
us v them, right? And I think that doesn't actually really help LGBTQ youth, because LGBTQ youth are going to be coming from all walks of life. And so at the Trevor Project, especially in my advocacy team, we have a variety of political perspectives that we bring to the table, right, on my staff. And we do this for a very specific reason, which is to say, guess what? Whether you are the kid who's attending church every day, or the kid who never wants to set foot into a church again, whether you are going to the Republican National Convention or the Democratic National Convention, whether you are excited to vote or think that voting is silly, we want to be the crisis intervention program for you, right? And I know that's kind of a cop-out when it comes to your question about political climate, but that's how I think I interact
but you
with
need to
political climate.
appeal to everyone, because everyone,
Exactly.
Suicide knows no bounds, basically. There are plenty of people who have, like you said, a variety of different opinions and beliefs, but like at the end of the day, they're still going to need someone to talk to if they're feeling alone.
Right. And making sure that if you are ever feeling alone, knowing that when the other person who picks up the phone or on that text chat is ready to listen, right? We see the impacts of political climate, right? When the administration tweeted about a trans-military ban, our numbers skyrocketed, right? Like, we recognize that words have true consequences, and we do all we can to help deal with those consequences and prevent those words from ever happening in the first place.
Right.
That's where I think it's kind of nice to see the work that's been done by a variety of LGBT groups across the country, whether it be the National Center for Lesbian Rights work in the courtroom, whether it be, the PFLAG, the amazing work that PFLAG is doing with parents, families, and friends, right? Like, to build community around LGBTQ youth, whether it be GLSEN doing amazing work in the school system, right? The political climate does not stand a chance against the might of the LGBT movement.
That's very powerful. Amazing. So we have a couple more questions, and then I kind of want to open the floor for whatever else you want to plug and talk about, and make sure that folks listening really pay attention to during this episode. I want to know what else you want listeners to know about youth and how to support them. So if someone who's listening is an ally or a parent or someone who's in the community themselves, how do you want those people to be supporting LGBTQ youth in a time like this, and how can they do that?
Sure. So first off, it's always important for us to recognize that hard conversations need to still happen. So if you see an LGBTQ youth who may be going through a really rough time, it is never a problem. You are not going to put suicide into their minds, but it is never a problem to, in confidence and in respectfully ways, ask, are you thinking about suicide? Like, is there something that I can do to help? Right? These are important conversations that need to not be ignored. I think we are also worried that we're going to have to be the problem solvers, and we don't. We have to get them to the resources. That's why Trevor Project exists. LGBTQ youth need to know that resources exist out there for them, but many of them just don't have the knowledge or the access to those types of resources right away. So ask the tough questions and be ready with the good answers. Be ready to say, hey, do you know if your school has a GSA? If not, let's talk to Glisten about maybe founding one there. Hey, did you know that Trevor Project has this awesome program called Trevor Space, an online community for LGBTQ youth with more than 170,000 LGBTQ youth from all over the world who just talk to each other. Think of it like Facebook or MySpace, but for the LGBTQ community, and we don't sell your data to the Russians. Like, what a win. Like, Trevor Space is this non-crisis moment where people just get to talk to each other. Another way you can support LGBTQ youth is by standing up for them in times when you may hear something that's offensive, right? So to not always have to be the one to talk about something is really important. I raise this up all the time with pronouns. I, at the beginning of this interview, mentioned that my pronouns are they and them. And it is really powerful to me when my friends and my colleagues will, when someone misgenders me, says, actually, Sam uses they and them pronouns and like doesn't make a big deal about it, but just make sure that I feel respected, right? These are simple things that aren't about making my life necessarily easier, but making it so that I don't have to be the one to bear the burden.
Right.
So ask the tough questions, have the good answers, bear some of the burden, and I would say the last part is celebrate the good. We have just spent a whole amazing interview where you and I got to celebrate 20 states having ended conversion therapy for minors, with another huge. 20 states working on it, right? Like, we are in the midst of a great and powerful wave of true life-saving work. I get to measure my, end of my year work in the number of lives I've saved. That's a really exciting way to go to work, right? And we know the smallest estimate is that we have already saved more than 10,000 LGBTQ youth from conversion therapy.
Wow.
That is a way to go. That is a number to give to LGBTQ youth, no matter who they are, and say, someone's fighting for you. Like, lives are being saved, and your life is just as important as all of those other lives. So I want you to know that good things are happening, not just the coronavirus news, not just the tweets, right, from an administration, not just, maybe a bully in their school. They need to hear the good things. We should be celebrating the days when things go well, right? We started this interview again with me saying that, the rain is coming, but the sun is shining, right? Like, I did that on purpose because I think it's important to remember that the sun is shining. I see the rain. I do. I'm not discounting the political climate, but I'm saying that the good outweighs the bad in the end. And that's what we fight for.
Oh my God, that really was so beautiful. I love your optimism. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do. We are so lucky to hear your story and to get to know you a little bit better here at Sex Ed with DB. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a really exciting time to be doing this work, and I'm honestly excited to have an amazing colleague like you ready to do the work right beside me in your own special way.
Oh, thank you so much. And just last but not least, do you want to share with people how to find the Trevor Project online and kind of any sort of way to get in touch, or your website stuff, or whatever you want to share with that?
Absolutely. So let's say you need some help. Go to thetrevorproject.org/help. That's where you can get all kinds of our resources. So if you take one thing away and you need help, get to thetrevorproject.org/help. To get to our lifeline, call us at 1-866 488-7386. Let's say you're like me and a millennial and you can't stand to talk on the phone. So like text is your thing. Text the word START to 678-678. And again, you can reach us 24/7, 365. If you go to our website at thetrevorproject.org, you can also learn all about our 50 Bills, 50 States campaign. Look us up, use hashtag 50 Bills, 50 States after you listen to this podcast, and I'll be able to find you and we'll keep the conversation going about all the great ways you can work to end conversion therapy.
Ever wish you had an exact replica of your gorgeous parts? Well, now you can make one yourself thanks to Clone-A-Willy. Clone-A-Willy and Clone-A-Pussy are DIY molding kits that allow anyone to make an exact replica of any penis or vulva at home into a high-quality sex toy or memento. Use promo code SEXED20 for 20% off your purchase at www.cloneawilly.com. Follow them on Instagram at CloneAWillyKit. Sex Ed with DB is supported by Isle. Isle is a collection of high-performance, reusable period care products centered on body positivity, ethical business, and sustainability. Isle, previously known as Luna Pads, has an entire line of reusable pads, cups, and period underwear that's made from sustainable, technical, and safe absorbent materials. Find out more at www.periodisle.com and use promo code SEXEDDB to get 20% off your first purchase. Follow them on Instagram at periodisle. FemFun is a family-owned and operated brand of adult pleasure products centered around the belief that all intimate curiosities and fantasies should be explored with full confidence. With that in mind, and a mission to break sex toy taboos, they launched a movement coined Fempowerment, committing to the human desire to explore new experiences. Embrace the vibrations. Use promo code SEXEDWithDB for 15% off your purchase at www.femfun.com. That's www.femmefunn.com. Follow them on IG at FemFun. Our creator, co-producer, sound engineer, and host is me, Danielle Bezalel, aka DB. Our co-producer and communications lead is Catherine Cohen. Our main logo and banner graphic were created by Andrea Forgach. Our social media intern is Leslie Lopez. Our music theme is by Hook Sounds. Our ad music is by my stepdad, Bill Gant. Thank you so much to our featured guests, partners, and our listeners. If you're interested in advertising with us, email us at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. For more sex ed content, follow us on Insta at sexedwithdbpodcast. Tune in next time.